A year ago today, one of the most anticipated games was released, Battlefield 2042. The trailer and the ever-growing excitement for a new Battlefield created an atmosphere that everyone was hyped for. As we all know, the release of Battlefield was a major failure as there were many bugs, lack of content, and much more. Though EA has tried to resolve and amend the issues, a common question is asked, is it enough? In the next few minutes, we're going to discuss the reveal of 2042, the disaster of a release, the recovery, where Battlefield is today, and what their plans are going forward. Before we begin, if you have any thoughts about the game or video, feel free to leave a comment down below. Now on to the video. In June of 2021, EA announced a new installment to the beloved franchise, Battlefield 2042. When the trailer released, it took the gaming world by storm. It embodied every aspect that made players love the Battlefield experience and seemed to have a similar gameplay to that of previous Battlefields like 3 and 4. Granted, the trailer was cinematic, but it was a marketing masterpiece. The release of all-out warfare on next-gen consoles with over 100 people fighting for domination and glory was something I think all players were looking forward to with this game. The hype for this game was unreal and the future of Battlefield seemed to be heading in the right direction since a long time ago. If there was one thing perfect about this game, it'd be the marketing team. They sold a masterpiece and EA delivered garbage. With the anticipation for Battlefield 2042 at an all-time high and players ready to immerse themselves back into a new Battlefield, somehow, someway, EA managed to ruin a wet dream by releasing an unfinished game. When the game first released, there were many technical and performance issues that immediately drove players away from the game. You would think that a AAA studio like EA would fix those issues, right? Right? Of course not. It took EA months to make the game stable and a little over 7 months to add its first season or Battle Pass system to the game. Battlefields are known to have many issues at launch, but the issues present for 2042 could have been avoided. Did EA not learn from the mistakes of Cyberpunk? If a game is not ready to be released, then do not release it. Despite their chatter and hype, fans are more willing to wait to receive a higher quality game than receiving a pile of garbage with duct tape wrapped around it just to play it early. Since I mentioned Cyberpunk, I want to mention something real quick. Cyberpunk had room to fail, whereas Battlefield did not. Cyberpunk is a single-player game where the game can age like wine over time. There could be many issues at launch, but it has a longer duration than that of multiplayer games. Think of games like Cyberpunk, Witcher, the Fallout series, Skyrim, The Last of Us, Red Dead Redemption 2, and so forth. Do you know what all these titles have in common? They had issues at launch. Over time, those issues are able to be worked out and become masterpieces and beloved by all. With multiplayer games, it's a different story. They have short lifespans. If the game isn't functional or adequate at launch and not properly attended to, the players will simply quit playing and move on to another game that is functional. Additionally, multiplayer games have competitors and have to deal with new installments. For example, Call of Duty Vanguard was an awful experience, and it'll be a Call of Duty that people will not remember. But players will remember Modern Warfare 2 22 as it is a much better game. In just a year, Vanguard is no more. The point I'm trying to drive home here is that Battlefield squandered their chances of success early on with their performance issues. They had to fix the game immediately or else they would lose the fan base. Instead, EA took months to make the game stable. Single-player games have room to fail and repair over time, whereas multiplayer games do not have that luxury. They need to be fixed immediately. Another big issue for the disappointing game was the content. There was barely any content and what was there was bad. Let's start with the maps. There were 7 base maps and they were filled with issues. They looked amazing, but the problem was that they offered no tactical balance. You were playing on an open, desolate sandbox that were typically one-sided. The lack of cover made it impossible for players to advance on objectives, and the locations of objectives made it impossible to capture. The lack of proper map gameplay ruined the experience for many players who were willing to deal with the bugs and issues. Half a year after release, Battlefield received its first season of content. It was a typical battle pass that offered a new character, map, weapons, and other features like charms and camos. The fans were finally getting content, the world was happy, and maybe Battlefield was getting back on track. You would think that Battlefield was heading in the right direction, right? Of course not. They failed that too. After 6 months of repairs and inactivity, EA can only produce 1 map to satisfy the remaining players for another 3 months, meaning that for 9 months of gameplay, they'll only have 8 maps to play on? Not good, EA. Not good at all. 3 months later, Season 2 rolls around, they release the same formula. New map, new operator that looks like Andrew Tate, weapons, and so forth. The logic behind EA process of adding content is a head scratcher as they keep adding the most minimal amount of effort. Hazard Zone was a game mode that was supposed to mimic the Great Escape from Tarkov. collect intel, fight AIs and other players, and extract before you run out of time. Seemed like a cool idea, but it was just poorly implemented. The mode was buggy and died upon launch. For many people, they thought the idea of Portal was awesome. Get to play on iconic maps with different generations of soldiers and create a server to your liking. The issue with Portal was that it was not developed any further past launch. They added 6 iconic Battlefield maps from previous titles alongside the maps within the game, and that's where it ended. EA didn't add any other iconic maps from Battlefield like Metro, Operation Locker, and so forth. If EA added more maps to Portal, I think the perception of this mode would be much different, but I could say that about the game entirely. The last topic I want to discuss before we move on are specialists. With this game, EA took a new approach to how players played, and that was by adding specialists instead of classes. This was not a game-breaking issue, but it differentiated itself from previous titles for really no purpose. Specialists had special perks, gadgets, and abilities that other specialists did not have, but EA could have added these into the basic classes. I thought EA should have allowed players to customize the operators, similar to that of Battlefield 5, and leave it at that. All EA had to do was leave the basic assault, engineer, support, and recon classes alone, and just let players customize the layout and appearance to their own liking. It was just that simple. Today, a year after Battlefield 2042 was released, it is a desolate place to be a part of. Bots are filling the lobbies as players have left. The ambition and drive of the game is gone. There is no excitement to play Battlefield anymore as there are better alternatives available. Call of Duty is back on the map with MW2 and Warzone 2. Even this, at the beginning of November, Battlefield 1 had 50,000 concurrent players, Battlefield 5 had 15,000 players, whereas 2042 only had 5,000 players. To put this in perspective, Battlefield 1 came out in 2016 while 5 came out in 2018. With all this noise around 2042, is it even worth playing or discussing anymore? To put it simply, no, despite EA's plea of adding more content. Recently, EA announced their Year 2 plans for 2042, which consists of 2 new seasons. However, we'll only discuss Season 3 as it's releasing next month. In the new season, they plan on reworking base maps such as Manifest and Breakaway. The changes EA plans on adding to the maps can be seen as making the maps smaller, changing structures and formations, and adding additional cover. Another feature within Season 3 will be a new map that will be small in size and will be heavily infantry-based. Besides the maps, EA is adding a new season pass that will have a new operator, weapon, and the same formula they have used for the previous 2 seasons. Though the season seems interesting, I know that will get boring and feel generic just after a little time of playing it. The lack of content at this point is what is driving me away from this game. While I do appreciate EA owning up for their mistakes and attempting to fix them, it is still not enough to correct their wrongdoings. They had the world in the palm of their hands and threw it to the wayside and expected people to feel sorry for them. For the people that still defend 2042, you remind me of the meme where the dehydrated, shriveled up man is drinking drops of water, whereas the big guy is getting blasted with water. You should not thank EA for their recovery as they made the mess. They should have to clean up their mess and own it. EA should provide more content, and EA should have provided a stable game at launch. At this point, EA is trying to extract extra earnings from this game to mitigate its losses. All EA had to do is look at the golden blueprints of Battlefield 3 and 4 and implement it into a new game. That is what players wanted. They wanted that iconic, gritty, modern tactical shooter that Battlefield is known for, and yet EA delivered a mess. Going forward with Battlefield and EA, I can only hope that EA has learned from their mistakes and releases a game that is stable and is exactly what the fanbase wants. Pretty much a standard that any AAA studio should have. EA does not have to remodel the brand. They have everything they need to succeed. They just need to execute much better with the next Battlefield title. Thank you all for watching the video and making it this far. I wanted to share my thoughts on the progression of Battlefield over this past year, and I feel I covered a lot of areas that were points of controversy. If you want to share or add your thoughts about the video or Battlefield 2042, please feel free to comment down below. Once again, thanks for watching the video, and as always, take care.